Got
Well,
it.
hello again, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Collecting the Precious podcast. Jim and myself are back. No Ben or special
No, man.
guest tonight. Tonight, we're going to talk about a topic that I think you see, obviously, when you're looking at collections across the board. And I think it'd be interesting because I think, Jim and I, we while we have large, somewhat large collections, our collections and our approach is obviously, I think, a little bit different. My collection kind of encompasses all the characters, for the most part, that have appeared in the films or the books. And as we talked last time, Jim has a lot of pieces, like you can see in the background there. He's got pieces that touch different things, but he has a love for a certain character named Samwise Gamgee, and has a focus for that character. So just kind of talk about the pros and cons of it and how that can impact you as a collector. And I just thought it'd be kind of a fun topic to approach and go with. So Jim, I'll let you lead off. I'll start off with the question to you.
Yeah.
When you're collecting obviously with something like Lord of the Rings, with all the characters and stuff that are in it,
Right.
and you can really go anywhere. You could do, like I said, like I did with where you have kind of everybody or some of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
What about Sam made you say, yeah, I mean, obviously you have, like you said, you have other pieces, but what about Sam made you want to collect him, one? And two, do you feel that gives you the freedom to, let's say, like with the Escape Off the Road piece,
Sure.
and we'll talk obviously more about that probably later as well. But it's a piece that's on the expensive side of the collecting spectrum.
Sure.
Does it give you the freedom, you think, to do more pieces, say, like that, because you're focused on Sam? Or do you feel like maybe it holds you're pigeonholed in a way to where you have to maybe pass on a cool piece of like Aragorn,
Right.
and focus just on Sam? So
No, that's a great question. For me, well, if we take a little walk around, which may be fun at some point, you'll see that I am not just exclusive on Sam. I just happen to like to get everything that has a connection to Sam, and so it does give a bit of a focus that way. And for me as a collector, that's, I think it started with the assertion there is no way that I can collect everything, and that that started. Honestly, it started for me before any of the Jackson movies, because at some point I may show you my books.
Mm-hmm.
But when a lot of the memorabilia started coming out with folks like United Cutlery and Sideshow and Weta, you look at that whole array and you just say, I can't collect everybody. But it's not just a budget issue, as you'll also probably see it. It's just a space issue. I'm running out of both vertical and horizontal space,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have one of those cool rooms that we saw in the last episode to just put everything in. It's been tempting to go build a Hobbit hole somewhere in our property, but just haven't done that yet. But that kind of orientation toward particular types of things. So for me, it started with books, and it bled over into staffs, because my wife and I also have a large walking cane and staff collection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when all of a sudden you can actually get Gandalf's staff, which was one of the very first, I think, United Cutlery pieces we got, or Gimli's walking axe, or Saruman's staff. So that started coming. I started collecting the Decipher collectible card game thing. So massive collection of that. I can show you that picture in a minute. But then specific to Sam, because my wife and I were deeply embedded in the books, and in lots of Tolkien's letters and other things written about the books, Sam emerged for us as, and I could take you to the letters, as the hero. Now there's lots of heroes.
Right.
Sam is the closest thing in the Lord of the Rings as Bilbo is to the Hobbit. He's the one that truly goes there and back again. The last words in the whole book is, "Well, I'm back." And so,
Which make me want to cry every single time. By the way.
I know. And when you see Sam throw Frodo on his back and climb up Mount Doom, "I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can carry you." It makes a piece like that Comic-Con Sam on the slopes of Mount Doom. We must have that. We must have that. And so,
Right.
and that really developed. So for us, the Sam and Bill the Pony was one of the first, I think, was it a Weta or a Sideshow piece?
That was part of the Sideshow Weta line. Yeah, that was one of the original ones. That was
So that was
it's
probably
rare.
one of the earliest Weta Sideshow pieces that we got, and we got it because it was Sam.
Right.
And we kind of like Bill too. So that
Oh,
literally,
it's a beautiful statue.
yeah. So literally, I'll show you something real quick if I can figure out how to do this. Yeah.
Oh, there
So
we go.
literally, the last thing, I mean, it arrived yesterday. It's really small. Is this little Sam and Bill metal pewter piece?
Oh, that's cool.
So, and I've over on my shelf, I've got a truck, a semi truck with Sam and Rosie's picture on it. This is just ridiculous. So it's pretty much anything that I can find
Right.
that will have Sam on it. That adds to the collection. Now, what that does too, depending on how many things you're collecting, and as a collector, you got to decide how disciplined you're going to be. Because we were talking earlier, Josh, about secondary markets and throwing in things, and you can get things at a reasonable price when they first get released. But what about if you've missed it? So we started collecting environments, but we missed the original Orthanc Tower. There's a couple of Orthancs. One with the trees still there. It's more recent, but the early one was Orthanc, barren.
Right.
And that's a hard piece to find.
And it's hard. It's a hard piece to find. I can't remember what the edition size is. I want to say it's like 750 or something. It's not many, and it's fragile because unlike the new one, when they went and did it, it's made in a way where some of the pieces that stick off, I don't think they're direct polystone, but they're like a material that can take a little bit more, I hate to say abuse, but a little bit more abuse in the shipping process. Exactly. Whereas the original Orthanc was, I think, just straight polystone, because they didn't have that technology. I mean, it sounds weird, makes it sound like it was 1,000 years ago, but a lot's changed in the last 20 plus years of doing this. And so, it was a very fragile piece. I know a lot of people that over the years that have accidentally clipped those little pieces sticking off and had to glue them back on. And it's
right.
Yes.
Not good. But, so for a collector, even for a new collector, you got to decide. You got to decide what your focus is going to be.
Right.
And then you got to decide, so my wife and I are kind of completists. If we get one thing. So for example, I want to show you this, but the new frog thing, or the the ducks that come out with all. So, for some reason, we've got all the ducks because we want all the ducks. They're not that expensive. But,
no, they're a nice product. We talked about that last time. That's one of those fun little deals that when you're talking about maybe, or as we are talking about people focusing on something, it's a fun collectible. And if you don't get into, if you're not so rigid in that, it has to look like the movies. I mean, if that's what you're going for, or it's got to be like the books, it's a fun little collectible line that you can get into, and you can get all of them because you don't even approach like $300, which is not even what a statue costs, and have 10 ducks.
Right. And they come out in series, and you can spread it out.
They're very spread out. Yeah.
I'll give you another example here. We'll go up to this collection. So you've got the pop figures and these mini epic things. So there's I ignore the HMS Surprise. It's
they could have gotten to Mordor a lot faster if they just gotten on the boat.
That's right. That's right. But so those kinds of, and they're kind of movie, but really fun, and you wish they'd
Right.
make a cartoon of them. And they're the kind of thing that you can complete a collection.
Hmm.
But then, if you get serious about it, I just saw a Gandalf the White version with a pipe.
Yes.
Coming out of, I guess it's Europe or somewhere. Let's see.
Yeah, it's going to be a variant, I think, of the other of
Yeah.
yeah.
Or the San Diego Comic-Con version of Saruman with both his staff and Gandalf's staff. So they become interesting little variants. But the problem is, if you're one of these completist collectors, then you got to decide, am I going to spend $100 and whatever for a gold-plated Smaug or not?
Right.
So that's what you get into.
Well, and that's well, like you said, that's one of the reasons why I thought that this would be kind of a fun topic to talk about. I mean, you have obviously, as you said, a kind of a collection that hits upon many notes, but has a strong note, obviously, for Sam and stated why and stuff. And I think that that's something new collectors, especially new collectors, I would say to them is you have to pick a lane. Whether or not, I mean, you can dabble and that's fine, but you have to know if you're going to dabble in a lot of different lines, you have to be smart in how you do it, because you can't get it all. And I will say, I mean, not to get into personal business, I guess, of my own, but I will say that is something I learned the hard way collecting and built up more credit card debt than I would like to admit to, because I tried to do it all. And instead of just sticking with just a certain, not even just a certain character, but kind of like how you have so many pieces, but obviously you have a focus strongly towards Sam. I tried to get everything Sideshow was doing, everything Weta was doing, everything who Gentle Giant when they were doing some stuff, and instead of saying, okay, maybe I'll get one piece from Gentle Giant just to kind of have them represented, I went for a bunch. You can't do that, especially when you're talking about the prices of collectibles now. I mean, it was hard to do for those watching this. I mean, it's a situation where when I first started collecting statues, and you could get one, a base 1/6 scale statue from Sideshow, obviously, because Sideshow and Weta were working together at the time for those watching this. And you could get it for 125 plus shipping and tax and stuff.
Yeah.
Which at the time seemed like a lot of money. Now, when you're talking about the price of statues in 2021, it's really not. Right. But at the time, it was a lot of money. The original Balrog was $300. The original Cave Troll was $300. Sam and Bill were a little bit more than 125. I want to say maybe they were like 2 something, because it was you got 2 characters within and stuff. So those at the time those were expensive. So you could kind of also feel like you could get a bunch, and that led to to doing that. Whereas now with statues, you have like Weta, obviously they had their classic series. When just talking about 6 scale or bigger, their classic series is $349. Their regular 1/6 is anywhere between is $4 to $5 probably for decent pieces. Their premium line of what they refer to as their premium line, pieces like the Frodo and Witch King at Weathertop, it was $8, I think. The Cave Troll was like $12. Bilbo was $12, or no, the Cave Troll was $11. Bilbo was $12. So I mean, you're talking $800, $900, $1,000. Then you get into the master collection statues, and now you're talking $1,500 plus for Gollum, which at the time when Gollum came out, I was like, first off, it's an absolutely exceptional statue. I love it. But it was like $1,500, and then I just can't. And now, but I've now bought statues that were close to that. But and now you're talking Thranduil was like $3,000. The Escape Off the Road plaque, that was the old plaque. Sorry, the Escape Off the Road statue. It was $2,500. So these are really expensive. So if you're going to do collecting in 2021, my tip to collectors would be pick a lane and know what you do. If you're going to collect, I would collect like you do. I would get maybe dabble and maybe have a character focus. So that way you can kind of represent. I mean, how my collection is I think is fantastic. And I do get a lot of compliments on it. And I mean, not to, as we talked about last time, it is worth a fair bit of money.
Yeah.
But there were consequences to collecting the way that I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
And you can't do, and I can't do that now, even though I make more money now teaching in my 15th year than I ever have before. I'm actually much more selective now than I've ever been, because what we were talking about before we started filming, I have Galadriel coming next month for the classic series. She's $350.
Yep.
I've got Bilbo on order, the full nice version, like I said, the $1,200 with in bag in. I've got September's payment, October's payment, and November's payment, and then he'll be paid off, thankfully, before he ships first part of next year. And then I have Sauron on order, and now he doesn't ship until the second quarter of next year.
Right.
And he's $1,000. And it was one of those, when he went up, I couldn't do the payment plan on him, because then you're getting hit. And so you have to be, so I couldn't do the escape off the road statue. Even if I really wanted to, I could not put myself in that spot. So when you're a collector, you have to decide how do you want to collect? You have to decide who you're going to collect. I mean, do you want to collect statues? Is that where you want to go? Because what is involved? And they look like look like the movies that Jackson made. Do you want to do the ducks? Do you want to do the action figures that Diamond Select is doing? Are you going to do the 1/10 scale statues that Iron Studios is doing? Osmus does really cool 6 scale figures that they have the joints and stuff that you don't see. They're getting into 1/10 like scales stuff. I'm trying to think who else is out there. I'm going to forget somebody I know. Prime One is another expensive high-end statue people, and they're doing some really cool stuff. They're quarter scale. It's so, I mean, there's a lot of choices, and that's what, as Ben said last time, it's a really cool time to be a collector with so many choices.
Right.
But you have to have a focus. I'll probably repeat myself several times while we're filming this, is just you really need to focus. It's really, really important.
So I have a question for you. Do you when you're doing this, do you think of yourself as a collector or an investor? And have you ever sold a section of your collection? Decided, I'm going to carve that out and figure out how to recoup some cash to put it somewhere else.
I have bought pieces before, yes, with the thought of flipping them.
Flip it. Okay, and that's a little different, because did you buy another piece to keep and one to flip?
I did. I've done that before. Yeah. And that was one of the things that got me in trouble too when I was younger, because I thought I was smarter than the
market.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I picked a heck of a time. That's about the time when I had a bunch to flip. Yeah. I'm for anybody watching this, it's bad ideas. Don't follow in my footsteps. About the time the economy decided it wanted to go. And so when you don't, when the economy goes crappy and people are being careful with their money, it does. I bought, I might have bought that statue at retail, but
that's right.
It wasn't doing anything because people weren't buying. So I
message to the kids at home.
Yeah,
this is discretionary spending.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, there's, in some ways, to be honest with you, one of the best things that happened to me besides that was, as you've seen on Facebook, you've seen pictures of my nephews. Yep. And in some ways, the last 3 or 4 years, 3 years, because Oliver's 3, having him around, I love my statues. I'm going to keep collecting. That's what part do I do. But I look at him and I think, I want to do some fun stuff with him. So I'm going to give up a statue now and then, so I can have some money put back to take and do something fun with him as he gets older.
I'll show you an example of one of these investment pieces that is a surprise, and it's also in this Sam vein. So I'm walking over here to the wall, and this, that's a fun little. Sometimes you just pick up Sam and Rosie's from some Etsy shop.
That's cool.
They're just fun little pillows. But this guy is the museum collection Sam's sword.
Mm-hmm.
And we of course bought it as soon as it came out. It's number 300 of a 500 edition, which we had no idea it was even a numbered edition we got, because we got it, it was for Sam.
Right.
And now that thing, I saw one post on a Facebook thing where somebody just thought they got it at a steal for like $700 or $800.
Mm-hmm.
We paid nowhere close to that. So all of a sudden, we find that we've got this investment piece. We'll never sell it, but you just realize, or here, since we talked about Sam, I'll take you to my Sam shelf here. Here we go. So there's the Sam shelf. And there's that, oops, I got to get my finger out of the way. There's the Sam and the Bill the Pony. So
that is such a great piece. And like I said last time, I really wish that's one of those pieces. To answer your second question, yeah, I've sold stuff to, and some of it has been, some I when I was dating a girl and we got real serious, I sold a bunch of pieces to buy an engagement ring. Sam and Bill, unfortunately, was one of those.
Okay.
That didn't work out. But I've sold, I had, I made the mistake too. I talk about, I tried to have some Star Wars stuff in my collection. I tried to have some Marvel stuff in my collection because I really like those as well. Not as much as, Lord of the Rings, but I wanted to have some of those. And again, it was one of those, you got to pick a lane. If Lord of the Rings is your favorite, you might need to skip on Marvel and Star Wars and DC and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But I sold a bunch of those, and here a few years ago, and I had some Star Wars stuff still, Marvel and everything, and they were worth quite a bit. And I was able to go back and I got a Ring Wraith on Steed, the original Ring Wraith on Steed. It had one small little issue with it on the base. The foot and the peg hole didn't line up, because that sometimes that happens obviously in the mold making process. I was able to basically grade off the metal peg off of it and use it, and so one of the peg holes, the foot does not go into a peg hole, so you have to be a little more careful with it when you move it. Sure. But I got it for a cheap price because it had an error. I was able to rebuy the original Balrog. I went back and bought the original Saruman. So I was able to take a bunch of those pieces and rebuy some Lord of the Rings stuff that I sold. In the process of kind of finally getting rid of some credit card debt, I sold some Lord of the Rings pieces to finish that off. Pieces that I wasn't as attached to anymore, that had some value to them.
But I'll go back to your original point, which is, gang, if you're a collector, don't approach this as a flipping investor.
No.
Approach it because you love it.
Yeah.
And the issue is, if you miss something that you turn out, I really want that, you may have to pay more for it. So, and that's this dance of figuring out, do I jump now or can I wait?
Right.
So,
and you have to, you have to decide that when you're collecting and you decide it is, I'll use like the Bilbo at Bag End.
Yeah.
Do I want to pay the $1,200 that he costs now, or do I want to wait and have it be a situation where I have to pay $1,500 or $1,600. I remember when the Azog on Warg statue came out during the Hobbit films.
Yeah.
And it's a big statue, and he's heavy, and he was expensive because in order to kind of keep him together where he wouldn't lean over the years or have some of the structural problems.
Right.
They built him with like steel rods throughout the statue.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's got like a steel frame,
right.
And so he was really heavy, and he's expensive. He was like $800, $850 or something like that. Right. And I remember people just absolutely freaking out. But he goes for $1,200 or $1,500 now. So I mean, there are pieces that if you get the nice thing about, I guess, is don't buy to flip, but
Yeah,
also know that if for a lot of these statues,
they do hold
they
their
don't
value.
always double or triple in value. So I'll make that clear. But you can, with these, at least know if you have to, you have something, pardon me, that you can, do with. But I definitely would, but yeah, to answer your questions, like I said, I have bought to flip. Dumb. Don't.
Yeah.
And I have sold things to, so I sometimes you have to, like we talked about in the last episode a little bit, you do kind of run out of room. And so sometimes you have to sell stuff off, because I'd rather sell it off to somebody else that's going to display it.
Right.
Versus keep it in a box until I either can figure it out or rotate things. You know what I mean? And so that's a situation where, I wouldn't want to, want to rotate
So
things.
one of the benefits, as you're saying, if you choose your lane and you get in early, then, and as you say, for the most part, maybe, I don't know, the Burger King, things, maybe they lose value over time.
Right.
But for the most part, things at least tend to hold their value. And sometimes
the stuff like what you have behind you, the swords, the shields, the statues, those things tend to hold their value. I mean, you'll occasionally see a statue, Grishnak, I think kind of tanked a bit, maybe. Yasnig from the Hobbit is one of those I can think of that basically Weta was kind of giving away here recently because he just, one of the Hobbit films has their own sets of problems, and that didn't help those. But he's just not an in-demand character. And you've seen that over the what actually, to be honest with you, is funny enough, because this got brought up in conversation on the Flame of Badoon message board that I post on. Because we were talking about Prime 1, and they were, some collectors were wanting Prime 1 to do the Hobbits.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I've ever been told by, I'll say my sources because it sounds fancy. My sources at Sideshow and Weta both have told me over the years, the Hobbits don't sell. They just don't sell well. They're slow sellers, and that's why you don't see the Hobbits done solo very often.
Right.
And when you do see them, you see them in pieces like when Sideshow did Frodo and Sam in their orc armor, they were together. When Weta did Merry and Pippin recently,
as you're talking here, I'll zoom up on
exactly
that.
Yeah, and so you can see, they did them together, and it's a great statue. That this likeness on that Sam is absolutely fantastic. And so they do them together. Like I said, Merry and Pippin on Treebeard. You got all 4 hobbits on the escape piece. Frodo with the Witch King. Frodo with Arwen on the horse. On Osfaloth. You see pieces like that where they're together. You don't see them sold individually, just because they're slow for whatever reason. Is and especially when you look at characters like Frodo and Sam and their importance to the story. And I have a friend that very much agrees with you that Sam is the hero of Lord of the Rings. With his importance, they're slow sellers, and so it's a situation where they I don't know that they would necessarily lose value, but I wouldn't buy the Hobbits if you were thinking, well, if I have to sell this on a rainy day, I don't know that the Hobbits are a character that I would invest in.
I mean, so the Aragorns or the Legolases, or and the Galadriels and the Eowens and so on, tend to be more obviously heroic and desirable, or Sauron or the Witch King.
Baddies always tend to do really well. That's why it seems like anytime there's a line that starts, whoever it is, Aragorn's always one that leads off. Gandalf the Grey. You'll get a bad guy, Witch King. You might get Sauron. If you get creatures like, Osmus. They're, like I said, they're doing that what they call limited articulation statue line. And when they showed their preview video during Comic-Con, we talked about it. We showed the Balrog, and I think we only showed the Balrog. The Balrog, Lurtz, and Azog are their first three.
Right.
So their first three pieces are all bad guy monster creatures because they sell, and they sell not, they're items that collectors within Lord of the Rings, but also maybe people that just collect monsters collect. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a situation where, again, you just have to pick a lane and decide how you're going to do it. You can dabble a little bit, and I think, like I said, I think your collection is a perfect example of, in some ways, how to do it maybe the best way, because you can show a little bit of everything. Obviously, we saw Ben's collection, and it's a mind-blowing collection. But he's able, like you said there, he's lucky to be in a position where he can collect like that. That's another thing you have to think about. Are you in life lucky enough to be financially in a way where you can collect like that? If you are, then hey, gloves off, have fun. But if you're like most people, and especially when you're talking about the price of stuff now, you have to be very careful. Like I said, I'm in the best position financially I have ever been in my almost 40 years of existence. And I have those three pieces on order from Sideshow. Or from Weta, I should say. I have a couple of the Iron Studio stuff from Sideshow. But I passed on the Escape piece for right now. I'm holding off and getting the file, even though I really want to. It's an open edition, so I know that I can kind of hold off. It's not going to sell out from underneath of me. That's another thing you have to decide too on statues. Like, if it's an open edition, like it's part of the classic series, you might be able to hold off waiting and getting it, in a few months after it goes up for order, because it's an open edition. It's not going to sell out in a month. Now, obviously, limited edition pieces are different, and Weta doing the, it's up for order, we're going to announce the edition size in 10 days creates a different dynamic, because then you have 10 days to decide how much you want that. And that goes into the talk about. But
in both of those, whether it's a limited edition, Weta's starting to do editions that are based on the number of pre-orders, that kind of sets the edition size. But in both of those cases, and even what you did with the latest stuff out of Weta, they illustrate the principle of, if I'm in this market, if this is in my lane, then getting it when it's released, if you have the cash available, is the best thing to do, because it will most likely increase in its cost if you, and it's even in some cases in its availability. Some pieces you can't just find at all.
Right. Some pieces sell out so fast, and then you have but also not just me, but for like what you do as well, when like obviously with getting some of these master collection pieces and stuff like that you've gotten, they don't stick around very long. So you have to have a predefined lane of what you're going to collect. You have to know that you're in it for that, because
and for me, it also includes, I have to make sure my wife is in it as well.
Yes,
because we have a shared bank account.
Right.
And so we're not, even if I wanted to collect the Sauron figure, we are not together on that. Versus the Escape from the Road, we are absolutely together on that. It's just our various tastes, love for the books and different characters.
Well, but that's a dynamic too. Collectors have to think about. I mean, like, I'm single, so other than my family members here in the house, even though my stuff's downstairs, other than making sure that I'm not expanding too far.
Well, and here's the force.
I don't have to worry about asking another person or worrying about that. So that's something people have to think about too, because again, not to bemoan the price. And we're gonna, by the way, we have an idea for the next episode, kind of more talking about pricing. But pricing is something you have to really factor in when you pick a lane, because where do you fall on that scale of collecting?
Right. So here, I'll show you another principle when you're married. So, this is my nerd cave, and I'll take a spin. It has just all kinds of Lord of the Rings stuff, and Sauron's mace and shields and Arwen, and so yeah, we'll take this, and it includes a quilt that my wife made.
I
So
love that quilt. That's
part of
awesome.
your collecting is including stuff that you make for yourself. This is a Durin's door that we made for a party for the Two Towers. So this almost 20 years old, and just copied it and put some glitter paint on it. But here's the principle: I'm walking outside of my nerd cave, and there is still stuff that I'm allowed to display in different places. So you get my Galadriel set, or my old Orthanc Lego thing, which is really hard to find now. But this is where I'm going to, because this is my Tolkien shelf. And so some collectors, you don't have to just buy figures or environments or swords or so on. For some of us, and there's all those cards from Decipher.
Man, I thought I have several of those. I thought I had a lot of them. Holy cow!
Yeah, that's yeah. But here's that same principle illustrated of know what you're going for and buy it first. So these books here are the history of Middle Earth that Christopher Tolkien published, starting in, I think, the early 80s. I'd have to open one up, and kind of one a year. This set is extraordinarily hard to find out because these are all US first editions. And I just started buying them as soon as they were released because I loved the Lord of the Rings. I thought, hey, new Lord of the Rings book, go get that. And so you can get that set, which is all of those 12 volumes, but condensed into 3 that are coming out of HarperCollins in the US
right.
in the day. And so that's still possible, but these are almost impossible to find. Similarly, these down here are all the HarperCollins kind of box sets, which if you're getting them when they come out, they're expensive, but not as expensive as they're going to be if you were trying to complete that set afterwards. Or sometimes you just stumble into this. So like this book here, if you can see has a really cool, it's a box set with The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings in it. And it was a limited edition special anniversary.
Yeah, because it's out of the UK, because I have it too.
Yep. And if you got it when it first came out, it was reasonable, expensive, but reasonable. This thing is hundreds of dollars now because it's so limited in its availability. And I had no idea. Somebody said, wow, where did you get that? I said, get what? So as a collector, those are some of the surprises that you can sometimes find as you're collecting along the way. Right. And it's not like I'm ever going to sell these things, but it's like, well, that's really cool.
But that's but that's another lane to think about. Do you want to collect the books? I think I touched upon it last time a little bit for a minute. Here a few years ago, they did vinyls of all the extended Lord of the Rings soundtracks, and then they did each one of the movies, and then there was like a trilogy one or whatever. So there was 4 vinyls that were put out, and they have obviously multiple records in each box. And I want to say, and I have all 4 of them. I want to say they're like $120 for each one, but each one of them now is worth like $700 a piece at least. I think I think Justin one time told me the Fellowship one was worth like $1,000. So I mean, it's just one of those things that you pick a lane, and a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, and if you pay attention and get on certain things early, you can avoid paying those back costs. But as we've said a couple times already, you have to decide, is that what you want to do? Can you afford it when that's going up? Because if you can't, then you have to know that down the road, you may have to pay more. I mean, sometimes things go up a bunch, sometimes they don't, but most of the time, yes, they increase them. So you have to decide, and then, especially with new stuff. Well, I talked about the Azog. When it came out, like I said, it was like $800 or whatever. When that Azog on War came out, but now it's like, last I looked, it's $1,200-$1,300 or more. So that doubled. So you had to decide then, did you want to pay that, which was a lot of money then, or did you want to pay double now? The original Balrog from the Sideshow Wedding Line's another example of, at the time people thought, my God, $300, that's a lot. But now it's $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 consistently, even all these years later. So now you have statues that are, when you're talking about the museum collection or the master collection and the premium pieces, like the Bilbo or the cave troll that we reviewed here just recently, or Prime One's, stuff. These are statues that start out at $1,000.
Yeah.
So you have to decide, do I want to pay $1,000 now or not? But and I guess that's the theme of kind of what we're hammering here for collectors. And it's really, even though sounds like, maybe to anybody watching, it sounds like we're repeating ourselves, but it's really important because I think I want collectors to be able to collect and have fun and not make some of the mistakes that I've made, but also think about how you want to collect. Collect the way that you want. It's really, really important. My collection is really cool. I am very happy and proud of my collection, and I think it's a pretty badass collection. Yep. But I would not tell anybody you collect like I do, because that's not good advice. And I don't think you would tell anybody to collect the way that you do.
And it's because
you have a lot of stuff, but so it's a situation that you have to know, one, what type of collector you are, and then decide what lane you want to go in. Right. Do you want to buy maybe a couple of statues a year? Or if you're buying some of the bigger and fancier ones, is it just one statue a year? And you're going to have a small collection, but you may have some really impressive.
But you'll have a good collection. That's right.
So
that as you decide, two things. One is be open to happy discovery. So this shield behind me was a Dragon Con find. It was a damaged piece. It was the last day of Dragon Con, and the seller was really motivated to get rid of it because it was huge. And so do a little bargaining on the spot, and presto, you walk out of there with a substantially lower priced item. I wasn't in the market for an elven shield, but it was cool to have one, and I found a spot to hang it. So you get into those kinds of happy discoveries along the way, and you keep your eyes open, which is a great thing for I wasn't planning on it, but here you go.
Well, but that's a good point. Be willing to find things and search for things. No, like when you go to a Comic Con or a Dragon Con, if you're going shopping, that last day is almost always a good day to go, because anything that's still there, those sellers are willing to usually negotiate a little bit because they don't want to drag it back. So find that. When you're searching on eBay, try misspellings of names. Because people, even though they're fans of stuff, I've found a few pieces over the years by people messing up the name a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can find some cool stuff doing it that way. So absolutely. I think that's great advice. Be open to fate saying, maybe this is something you should think about.
How many ways can you misspell Sam, though? Really?
That one is definitely that one, maybe not so much, but yes, Saruman.
But the other point you were making too, I wanted to come back. Kind of the bookend point was, you as a collector, you have to beware of dragon sickness. You have to be able to let it go. So, as an example, I thought that those LP discs, color coded, were really cool when they came out, but I already had all the music I really needed. And I just decided they're neat, but they're not neat enough for me to go take that leap. I'd rather put my money somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And now, they're $1,000. So, I could go back and say, that would be really cool. It would complete, my musical collection.
Right.
But honestly, I'm just going to say that's really cool, but I don't have to have it. So it's a little bit like gambling. You have to be able to say, I don't have to have this.
No, I agree.
As part of your collecting psychology.
Absolutely. I think the dragon sickness, to tie in obviously with the fact that, what we're talking about with Middle Earth in particular. And I will say, I think for me personally, as a younger person, not that I'm considering myself old now by any means, but when I was younger, and
younger than me,
but you're young at heart, see, so that matters.
Yes.
But when you're collecting early on, especially, and you're not defining your lane, you're seeing what everybody's doing, and I think Dragon Sickness is a good way to compare it where I was at, because I tried to kind of like Pokemon, tried to, have it all, or,
Yeah.
and so I think you have to,
Yeah.
and so you have to, you don't be okay with not having everything. It's okay, there's a lot of pieces. If I, just brought up Weta's website and started saying, well, I skipped this one, or, whatever, Sideshow's had stuff over the years that I thought, that was other licenses, whether I was Marvel or Star Wars. I'm like, that's really freaking cool. I'd love to have that, but I can't. I mean, other than the last couple of years because of COVID, going to Comic-Con in San Diego and seeing all the stuff there's so much cool stuff.
Now, here's the other thing about cool stuff. I want to throw this in before we have to wrap, whenever it is we're going to wrap. But if you're looking for the Arkenstone of your collection, one of the things you might want to think about is actually commissioning something, or looking for that one of a kind piece. So you and I have talked about, for example, some documents, or for us, one of those is an artist that actually lives in our basement now, a guy named the Cave Geek. So you look him up online, search for Cave Geek, all one word, and he does pyrography in brain tanned leather, deer hides. And here I'll show you a couple of them, but they're one of a kind pieces. And if you're going to get the actual leather and not just go for the printed versions, which are also wonderful because he hand embellishes them. But here's an example of one of those, which, because he's burning into leather, he can actually do amazing 3D kinds of things. So there's Gollum in that, and he did Samwise over here like that. But we found him because we love maps.
Right.
We saw his version of the Lord of the Rings map, and we found out that there were like 5 of them. One he had, and 1 or 4 of them at the time. They're now 5, and one that he had sold to some lawyer somewhere in California. But one he gave to Richard Taylor, and one he sent to Stephen Colbert. So you think, well, that's cool company to be in. And so we commissioned him to do that. And I'll go back outside and show you one other one, which I hope is going to become popular. And he sells a lot of prints with the Amazon series because he did a Numenor for us.
Oh.
But again, but not that this is your gig, if you don't like maps or pyrography and leather, although you should. If you go on to an Etsy, or you go look for and search for artists and Tolkien, just like your great discoveries when you misspell something, you can find some fascinating pieces. Like here's another one that was a lot less expensive than those things. But so that guy right there is something that my wife found and gave me from an Etsy artist. And it's a wooden scroll that if I opened it up, you'd pull out in Elvish, English, and I think an Elvish transcript, a letter from Elisar, King Elisar, to Samwise that is announcing his impending visit to the Brandywine Bridge, where he hopes to see Samwise and Rosie and their whole crew. So, and that's the kind of discovery that you can sometimes make, and they become, and they're not always really expensive, right? But they become this kind of unique personal thing,
right? Well, like even well, I've talked about it before, and you and I have talked about it in the red book, that custom red book.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, the reason I found out about it was I was posting on the board at that time. I didn't get to see I never saw the finished product, but a friend of mine that lives here locally that I've talked about before, she got one. And I kicked around getting it for years. And ironically, when I sold some Star Wars pieces and Marvel pieces and everything here, oh gosh, it's getting close to 10 years ago, probably, at least.
Yeah.
I ponied up and bought it. And it's probably the best piece of my entire collection. I mean, that's not to say anything, not to hurt my friends at Weta or sideshow or anybody's
No,
feelings.
but yeah,
Um,
so you're on it. Yeah. So
you know,
there's the thing for collectors. Collect something that gives you joy.
Yeah.
It's back with that Marie Kondo thing. If I honestly applied it to all of my collections, I'd probably need to be throwing out a lot of stuff. But at the heart of it, it's what gives you joy.
right.
And so whatever that piece is. And
Right. And I think that that's the thing that I hope people take away from us talking this time, is that I think that's one of the big keys right there is enjoy what you're collecting. And that's why picking a lane is important,
Yeah.
and knowing what you want your budget to be and what you're wanting to go for. It could be something like that custom red book, which is amazing. And I have like I've told you, the Isildur scroll that he also has.
Yeah.
Those
or one of these maps. Yeah,
yeah,
same thing.
or the maps, or or it could be the ducks or whatever. But it needs or it could be, it could be statues from Weta, whatever you want to collect.
Right.
And before we go, I'll show this real quick. I'm gonna share screen because I want to make sure I show this real quick. Let's see here. Is that what I want? Yes. And then not the message board, although that's a great place to post. Let me do this.
Oh yeah,
I do want to show this.
No news, just out.
And it just literally, I mean, they previewed it at Comic-Con, like, hey, we might be doing this, and then they dropped it. So it's up right now, $119, as we talked about earlier.
Open
edition. But this goes along with stuff like the red book, that custom red book, and everything, and the maps that the artist that's in your living with you does and stuff. And I'm going to stop sharing it, so it's just back to us. But collect one, again, main thing, pick a lane, know what you want to collect,
right?
Or at least have an idea of, if you're going to maybe look at all the lanes, be very careful of what you do.
Yeah.
But pick a lane, know what you're going to collect, but most of all, enjoy what you're collecting. Because and the two, and it sounds funny to say it that way, but the two will go hand in hand. And I can say from my own personal experience as a collector who got dragon sickness, is the best way to put it, I think. As you put it, I kind of got to the point where I don't know that I was enjoying everything I was getting, because I was, one, buying a lot, but also because I was financially putting just buying everything and putting myself in a bad financial spot. And so, there was something that was taken away from it because I was doing more than I should have been. So that's why, like, in some ways, this topic is important to me as a person and as a collector, because it's like, pick a lane, know what you want to collect. And if you do that and you stick to that for the most part, and I wouldn't say never, if you only do certain, and then you happen to, like you said, you happen to have a happy circumstance where something special comes across.
Yep.
Don't pass on it just because, I have to stick in this lane, I have to be rigid. Don't pass on it just because of that. But also don't go crazy so you don't enjoy the pieces that you're getting, because that's the whole point of what we're collecting Lord of the Rings stuff and Hobbit stuff, is because of what this universe means to us, and the happiness that comes from it, and the things that can be learned from the text and the movies and stuff. So yeah, I think it's very, very important to do that. And that's, like I said, why I wanted to talk with you this time about this, because our collections are similar and different. I don't have a focused character, right, and then a few sporadic pieces of everything. I kind of have a bunch of stuff where you have sporadic cool stuff, but a focus on Sam. And those are just different ways. And we saw Ben, like I said, we saw Ben's collection last time. But if you do it smartly, you can have a lot of fun. And I think Jim and I are good examples of that. Me now, especially, that I've realized it, at least in time, than other collectors that are out there that are in some of these different groups. I think it's a situation where I think if you it's really easy to get wrapped up, especially with social media, to see what everybody's buying and
Yeah.
buy something because you kind of feel a pressure, like I've got to have that too,
Yeah.
so that way I can sit and talk about it. There's a lot of threads on, I'll use Flame of Undoom because I post there so much and I have so many friends there. There's a lot of threads that I might pop in when it first gets announced. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Here's my thoughts on it. And then I never go back into it ever again because I don't own the piece. So what's, there's one, it keeps me from being tempted. And two, what, I'm not talking, there's no point for me to go in there because I don't own that piece. So it helps out. But yeah, I mean, for me, I guess my kind of final thoughts are just that, pick a lane, know what you want, have an idea, but most of all, enjoy collecting.
Exactly.
Because if you don't allow yourself to enjoy it because you're getting overwhelmed by those others, you're not making good choices, I guess. You'll never allow yourself to enjoy it. So
yeah,
pick one, and go from there.
And look, it's like we tell people when we go to these cons. So Dragon Con is happening in a week, and it's kind of like cosplay. Because collecting, there's a correlation. Some, cosplay becomes a competition. And, look at me, how cool I am and how, screen accurate mine is or how creative I've been. Because I'm on staff, you constantly have to remind people, it's not a competition and your cosplay is great because you're in it.
Yeah.
In the same way,
absolutely,
for your collectibles, you have a great collection. You may only have one thing, but for you, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does it bring you joy? That's great. Are you open to the serendipity of finding something else? That's great too. But there's no pressure. It's not a competition. Pace yourself and have fun. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually pacing yourself is also something that people need to think about, because I have seen many people over the years come in guns a-blazing and buy a just crap load of stuff within a short period of time, and within 6 months they're like, yeah, I'm done. And it's not necessarily maybe that they weren't fans of the material, but they bought so much so fast that it's overwhelming, which again goes back to, like you said, pacing yourself, picking a lane, and then allowing yourself to enjoy it, because it isn't a competition. Like I said, I think I have a pretty cool collection, but if I was to sit there and try to go toe to toe with like Ben, he's Mike Tyson and I'm everybody that was before Buster Douglas, for anybody old enough to remember who Mike Tyson actually was back in the day,
watch your ears.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, if you try to get into that, and like I said, that's what, it's great social media, we get to share stuff, but if you're trying to match Ben, or you're trying to match me, or they're trying to match you or whatever, and you're new, you're going to overwhelm yourself. You're not picking a lane and you're not going to have fun. You're going to eventually just say, this isn't what I wanted. And it could possibly ruin your love for the material.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess, like I said, for me, that's why this episode was kind of important and why I wanted to do this episode tonight, because I think it's important for people to think about, especially when, again, and we'll get into pricing and edition sizes in the next episode, where, in some of these thoughts will come up, but with where the collectibles are at in 2021, with the cost of them, having a plan is what you should do. It allows you to be happy. It allows you to build a cool collection, but it also allows you for the opportunity for when a shield comes up and you weren't really looking for one, you're like, hey, what do you know? I haven't bought anything in a while. I'm in a good spot. I can afford this because it's a good deal. Yeah. And so my final thoughts here are to collectors out there is just have fun. As Jim said, I think that's the main thing. And pick your lane, know what you want to do, and just enjoy it. I mean, that's why we're doing it. I mean, and then
look for the One Ring and send us some pictures. Show us your stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, please. I mean, that's we did that. It's been a while now, but we have done that where collectors have sent stuff and we showcased a few collectors. It's easier to do kind of for us on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, because there's no having to write stuff up in WordPress and upload it to the galleries. It's a lot easier. But
Oh, yeah.
tag us in those posts, you know, or send them to Spy Master or what, you know, something like that. And you know, they'll get passed on to myself or to Jim, and we'll figure out a way to make a post on Facebook or Twitter and say, hey, here's some collector stuff that, you know, we've seen. So and depending on, you know, if this continues to do well, and we got some good feedback on the first episode, and you know, there was lots of people that said, hey, we watched all 3 hours of it. You know, we plan to have more episodes where we have people on, other collectors. I got a guy on the Flame of Undune who's a new collector. He's like, I want to come on and talk what it's like to be a new collector. So to hear his thoughts will be kind of cool. So like I said, next episode, we'll figure out, you know, a time to get together. Well, I think edition sizes and prices, and the correlation between the two, and what is the right price for the right edition size, and when is an edition size too big compared to then and now, will be a fun topic, because that's one that always kind of gets bouncing around in threads, and it's unique to hear perspectives from new collectors and old collectors. So you know, just again, we here at the OneRing.net, thank you guys for your support of not just things like this, but the site in general, all the stuff that we put out there. It really does mean a lot to all of us. As we've said before, we're all volunteers. And so to have you guys say the things that you do that are always positive, and then, you know, the things when we mess up or things that we can do better, those are appreciated as well, because we can't improve if we don't hear constructive feedback. So until the next time, I'll say goodbye, good night, and I'll see you soon. Jim, you got any final thoughts before we're out?
No, I think you covered it, man.
All right.
Fun.
Bye, guys. Thanks for